Good morning. Welcome to my channel English Literature. Today we'll read about some of the important tales in Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. We are already introduced to the characters of the Canterbury Tales. Today we'll discuss some major stories told by them. Now the arrangement of tales group wise. You can find that they divided the pilgrims in some groups. Group A, Group B, Group C, Group D, Group E, and finally Group F. And in this way, every day they tells the stories from this group, and then they hold somewhere in some inn for the night's rest. Okay, they cannot talk at night after the whole day's talking. Oh, again there is Group G, H, and I. So total there is these groups. The first tale that will be introduced, that is the Knight's Tale. The Knight's Tale is a first tale in Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. Keep it in mind that whose tale is the first, the Knight's Tale. It is based on Chaucer's own experience. Major characters of the Knight's Tale: Theseus, Palamon, Arcite, and Emily. The setting is at the backdrop of ancient Greece. Theseus is the great conqueror and the Duke of Athens. So what happened? Four women knelt in front of his horse and lamented for their husbands, who were killed at the siege of the city of Thebes. And Creon, who was a lord of Thebes, refused to bury their bodies. So enraged Theseus marched on Thebes and conquered the land. Then he returned the bones of their husband to the wives. On his way back, he discovered two wounded enemies whom he did not kill, but whom he just take care and recovered, but imprisoned in the Athenian tower. Okay. So who are they? They were Arcite and Palamon. These two characters. They were the wounded soldiers whom the king Theseus took care and then imprisoned. Palamon from his prison saw Emily. Who was Emily? Theseus' sister-in-law. He fell in love when he saw Emily, and Arcite later he also saw her and fell in love. So both of them, Palamon and Theseus, both of them fall in love with one lady. And from this the trouble arrived. One day a duke, Perotheus, petitioned for Arcite's freedom. So Arcite was freed but had to leave Athens. So what is the value of freedom when he had to leave Athens? He cannot now look at the beautiful Emily anymore. So with a bereaved heart, he just left Athens. Palamon, though imprisoned, not freed like Arcite, is fortunate enough because he still could see Emily every day from the tower. Lovelorn Arcite returned to Athens, disguised, and took a job as a page in Emily's chamber under the pseudonym Philostrate. Okay, so which pseudonym Arcite took when he returned, and which profession also? He was job as a page. So keep this and note down this information that Arcite took the disguise of a page in Emily's chamber and take the pseudonym what? Philostrate. In the meantime, Palamon also escaped from prison. So both the friends met face to face and claimed Emily. They challenged each other in a duel. Theseus found them in the duel. Palamon revealed his identity and prayed for Emily's hand. Theseus was about to kill them, but Queen and Emily pleaded for their lives. Theseus announced a tournament after 50 weeks where they both had to fight for the hand of Emily. And among them, who will be the winner? He can marry Emily. So and they are engaged between them 3 gods and goddesses. They also took part in the battle, supporting the warriors and Emily. They are the 3 god and goddesses. Who were they? It is very important to note down. They were the goddesses of love, Venus, god of war, Mars, and goddesses of chastity, Diana. So these 3 gods and goddesses took part in the battle. Now, finally, Arcite died in war, and he pleaded Emily on his deathbed to marry Palamon. And in Shakespeare's the two noble kinsmen, we find the influence of knights still. This Palamon and Arcite were the 2 noble kinsmen. So it is very important to note down which play of Shakespeare follow Chaucer's The Knight's Tale. And the answer is the 2 noble kinsmen. Okay. Now let's go to the next story. That is the Miller's Tale. We will not talk about all the stories, but some important stories. The Miller's Tale is somewhat crude in its approach and theme. It is a story of a carpenter. So you have to keep in mind the major stories told by whom and the major characters and theme. The Miller's Tale, there is carpenter. In whose tale the carpenter was a character, and what was his name? His is John. And his beautiful wife Alison, and 2 young clerks, Nicholas and Absalom. So these are the characters of Miller's Tale you have to keep in mind. Now, Nicholas was a poor astronomy student who boards with John, an elderly carpenter, and his wife Alison. Absalom was a Paris clerk. So who was Nicholas? Nicholas was a poor astronomy student. And who was Absalom? Absalom was a Paris clerk. Okay. John was a dim-witted carpenter, a foolish type of. So Nicholas cheated him with a story of massive flood and made love with his wife. The next story is the wife of Bath's Tale. It is very, very important. She tells the story of King Arthur's Knight. So who tells the story of King Arthur's Knight? The wife of Bath. And it may be the wife of Bath's Tale, who was the character, one of the knight of King Arthur, who rapes a maiden. The king condemned the knight to death, but on the queen's request, the king permitted her to pass judgment on the knight. The queen asked him a question and told him that on his answer lies his life. So what was the question? It is very important to note down that what was the question of queen that she asked the knight. What is the thing that women most desire? What is the thing that women most desire? Do you know the answer? If you don't know, then you can get your answer in this tale. Okay. As the knight cannot answer her, the queen gives her 1 year time. So for an answer, the queen gives 1 year time. You can imagine. The knight wanders in search of the answer. Finally, an old woman gives him the answer. Woman wishes her sovereignty over her husband most. Okay, that is the answer. What is the thing the women most desire? The women most desire her power over her husband. But as per the condition of the old woman, the knight has to marry her. She gives her a long lecture over virtue and finally reveals a real physique, a beautiful young maiden. It is like the frog story. That frog was the real king, the prince. Okay, the disguise story. Now we'll read the Clerk of Oxford's Tale. Clark's tale is the first tale of Group E. He tells the group that a learned gentleman from Italy told him the story. So who was that learned gentleman? We can guess. It is Petrarch. The story narrates the patience of Griselda. So this story is quite contrary to the wife of Bath's tale. The Clerk of Oxford's Tale is quite contrary to wife of Bath's tale in its theme. A beautiful and virtuous girl, she has to go to the test imposed by her husband Walter. The character is Griselda and Walter. Keep these character names in mind. And Walter was king of Saluzzo, Italy. The Clark's tale is seen as a counter story of the story of Wife of Bath. Following Wife of Bath, woman desires sovereignty over her husband most. But Clark's tale projects a woman who is completely submissive to her husband. Okay? So whose tale was the counter story of Wife of Bath? The Clark's tale was the counter story of Wife of Bath's tale. Keep this point in mind. Next tale is the Merchant's Tale. We read the Merchant's Tale from the perspective of a misogynistic literature. The tale focuses on the infidelity of the women. January, that is character, an old but rich merchant. Who was January? Old but rich merchant in Lombardy marries a young beautiful woman whose name is May. Okay, these are the names of some month, January and May. But a handsome youth named Damien falls in love with May at the marriage party and sends her love letters expressing his love-lorn condition. May reciprocates his love. The lustful old January, in the meantime, loses his vision and May makes love with Damien. But at the end of the story, January regains his vision. The Square's Tale. Here the characters are Kambus Khan, the king of Zarev in the land of Tartary. Wife Elfeta, two sons, Algersib, Kambalo, and daughter Kanas. A knight named Gawain presents 4 gifts to the king on his 20th anniversary. So what was the occasion? 20th anniversary of the king Kambus Khan. And who present? Gawain. He was a knight. And what he presents? 4 gifts. So what were those 4 gifts? Number 1, a brass horse that can fly fastest when pressing a magic key in its ear. Okay. Number 2, a mirror that can reveal the minds of all friends and enemies who look through it. Oh, what a wonderful gift. I wish if I had this. Okay. Even it can recount the past and foretell the future. Number 3, a ring. When a person will wear it on the finger, he will be able to understand the language of any living being and speak in that language, animal or bird. Number 4, a magic sword that can slay anything, living or non-living, man or rock. The king gifted the ring to her daughter. So among these 4 gifts, the king gifted the ring to her daughter, who uses its power over a hawk. So this bird. Okay. The story ends abruptly. Why? As the Franklin interrupts the story and starts his own story. So the Squire's tale was interrupted by which character? The Squire's tale was interrupted by Franklin and also followed by Franklin. Now come to the Franklin story. The characters and plots. Arviragus, who was Arviragus, a knight and a nobleman who married a beautiful maiden, Dorigen, and then left her for his work in far land. Aurelius, the secret lover. So who was Aurelius? The secret lover of Dorigen. He removes all the rocks from the coast of Brittany upon her demand. And then he confronts to marry her. So Dorigen actually was anxious for her husband's return. She always thinks that there is too much rocks at the coast of Brittany, so her husband cannot return safely due to those rocks. His ship may get devastated, clashing the rocks. So when Aurelius proposed her and forced her to marry him as her husband has not returned for a long time. Then Dorian put this condition that if Orellas can remove all the rocks, then she will marry him. Orellas did the job. So now what Dorian will do? In the meantime, Arvigaras returns and the husband and wife unite. The physician tells a gory dark tale. So the host requests the partner to tell a jovial tale to brighten his mood. Okay. After the person's tale, there is a physician's tale, and now as the physician's tale was gory dark tale, so the partner requests him to tell a happy jovial mood tale. Partner's tale. The theme of his tale, as mentioned by him, is Redix malorum est cupiditas. What is the meaning of the phrase? Greed is the root of all evils. So the theme of the tales, you keep it in this phrase in mind. Redix malorum est cupiditas. The meaning is greed is the root of all evils. And he proves this in his story. He starts his tale in the form of a prologue like a wife of birth. So some of the characters told their stories in the prologue system, like wife of birth and pardoner. Three young men of Flanders indulges in vices like gluttony, drunkenness, gambling, swearing, etc. They spend the night in an inn and come to know about death of their friend by an unknown enemy whose name is also Death. They set out to seek the slayer and kill him. On their way, they encounter a very old man. When they ask him about death, he tells them to search under a nearby oak tree. The three men find gold coins. Then they kill each other to own the treasure by themselves. So, in their search for death, they meet their own death. Now, the shipman's tale is about a rich merchant, his beautiful wife, and an immoral monk. Next, the Prose tale. The story is based on the anti-Semitic theme prevalent among medieval Christians. A little son of a widow was abducted and slain by the Jews on the charge of singing O Alma Redemptoris. But even after his death, he kept on singing the song. Why? Because Virgin Mary put a grain upon his tongue. That's why he can sing the song even after his death. Before his burial, the grain was taken out and he stopped. In Chaucer's Tale of Sir Topaz, written in prose, Sir Topaz is a knight, a hunter, and a skilled archer. He dreams of an elf queen who will be his wife since he does not consider any earthly woman to get the position. But this story is interpreted by the host Harry Bailey. So Chaucer's Tale of Sir Topaz was interpreted by host Harry Bailey. Chaucer's other story, the Tale of Meliboeus or Melevey, is a long one that deals with a serious question whether we should avenge violence by another violence or not. The debate is between Melevey and his wife Dame Prudence. So Chaucer's Tale of Meliboeus, what was the theme of Chaucer's Tale of Meliboeus? That whether we should avenge violence by another violence or not. And the character is, the debaters are Melevey and wife Dame Prudence. Actually, they lost their daughter in the hands of three enemies, but as they were shocked and in very much pain for the loss of their daughters, but still they are thinking that revenge, after revenge, we only produce nothing. Now, the Monk's Tale. The Monk's Tale comprises 17 short stories on the tragic end of the historical figures. So, 17 short stories. Not one story, but 17 short stories. Figures like Adam, Lucifer, Samson, Hercules, Nero, Nebuchadnezzar, etc. Though the monk boasts of such 100 tales in his talk, the knight stops him after 17 on the charge of too much sadness. Okay, if he goes on the 100 tales, then none will get the chance at all. The non-priest tale. It is an interesting and popular beast fable. Again, story within story technique is taken here. So, non-priest tale is an interesting beast fable. Chanticleer is a heroic rooster. He has 7 hen wives. So Chanticleer is the character. Here he has not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but 7 wives, and he is the most handsome cock in the barnyard. Partole is Chanticleer's favorite wife. So who was Chanticleer's favorite wife? She was Partole, and she is also very clever. One night, Chanticleer dreams that a fox will carry him off. Partole soothes him and suggests a good laxative so that he can take good sleep. Then Chanticleer tells her a story about two pilgrims and other moral stories. So story in this story technique is applied in this tale. One day, the fox, who is the name of the fox? Don Russell. Don Russell, who keeps eye on Chanticleer from distance, catches him. But Chanticleer outwitted the fox, Don Russell, with flattery and escapes his clutches. The Parson's Tale is the final tale of Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. It highlights the spiritual ways of emancipation and the main way to attain God's forgiveness is penitence. Through the imagery of a tree, he preaches his doctrine. If penitence is a tree, then its root is contrition, is that repentance for the sin. The branches and leaves are confession, and the fruit is satisfaction. The seed is grace, the essence of God's love. It is a beautiful imagery, you can see. And through this imagery of a tree, he represents the main theme, that is God's forgiveness, how one can attain God's forgiveness. The person describes in detail the 7 deadly sins. Keep in mind the 7 deadly sins. They are pride, envy, wrath, sloth, avarice, gluttony, and lust. Okay, so today we completed Chaucer's tale, the important tales from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Thank you.